There is a point where loyalty and betrayal become so entangled that history itself refuses to say a name. A point where a nation builds a monument to honor an act of extraordinary courage while erasing the man who performed it. Most memorials exist to make sure we remember someone. This one exists to make sure we don't. On a quiet stretch of battlefield in upstate New York, half hidden among trees at Saratoga National Historical Park, stands a monument shaped like a boot. No face, no name, no inscription identifying who it honors. It is one of the strangest memorials in the United States, and it commemorates one of the most complicated men in American history, Benedict Arnold. Walk up to the boot monument today and you'll find a stone pedestal topped with a carved military boot, a cannon, and laurel leaves of victory. The inscription speaks of the most brilliant soldier of the Continental Army, wounded in the same leg twice in defense of American liberty. It describes his rank, his heroism at the battles of Saratoga in 1777, the decisive engagement that convinced France to back the American cause. Every detail points unmistakably to one man, and yet his name appears nowhere on the stone. Visitors often stand there confused, sensing they are looking at a puzzle deliberately left unsolved. That confusion is not an accident of poor design. It is the entire point. Whoever raised this monument wanted the accomplishment remembered and the man's identity withheld, as though history itself was still deciding whether he deserved to be named. The story behind the monument's creation is where the real mystery lives. It was commissioned privately in 1887, more than a century after the battle, by a wealthy and eccentric military historian named John Watts de Peyster. De Peyster was fascinated, almost obsessively, by Arnold's battlefield genius, and frustrated that the man who arguably saved the revolution at Saratoga had become the new nation's most infamous villain. Arnold, brilliant and reckless, had led decisive charges that broke British lines, only to grow bitter over slights, debts, and passed-over promotions. Years later, he conspired to hand West Point to the British, a betrayal so total that Benedict Arnold became, and remains, American shorthand for traitor. De Peyster wanted a monument that separated the soldier from the traitor, honoring the leg wounded in patriot service without honoring the man who later broke his oath. So he designed something almost unheard of in public memorial art: a monument to an anonymous body part. The boot stands in for the man, wounded, fighting for a cause he would later try to destroy. Historians and park archivists, including records maintained by the National Park Service at Saratoga, confirm the monument's unusual origin and De Peyster's personal role in commissioning it without official government backing. It was not raised by Congress or the state, but by one obsessed individual acting almost unilaterally, which is part of why it carries such an unofficial, almost guerrilla quality within an otherwise solemn battlefield landscape. Park historians note that the inscription's careful, deliberate omission of Arnold's name reflects an ongoing 19th century argument about whether his early heroism could, or should, ever be separated from his later betrayal. Some contemporaneous accounts frame it as thinly veiled tribute, others as historical trolling aimed at a country still unwilling to reckon with a complicated hero. Either reading confirms the same underlying truth. This is one of the only monuments in America built to honor a man by refusing to say who he was. The documented facts are not in dispute. Arnold was shot in the same left leg at both the Battle of Freeman's Farm and later at the Battle of Bemis Heights, both part of the Saratoga campaign, and his tactical leadership in that second battle is widely credited by military historians as decisive to the American victory. What's contested is intention. Was De Peyster's monument sincere tribute, dark irony, or provocation dressed as reverence? There is no letter, no diary entry that definitively answers why he chose silence over inscription. The historical record gives us the boot, the wound, the battle, and the missing name, and lets each visitor draw their own conclusion. That absence of a clean answer is, in a strange way, more honest than a plaque ever could be. What the Boot Monument really represents is a test of how a nation is allowed to remember. American memorial culture has always leaned toward moral clarity. Heroes get statues, villains get erased. Arnold complicates that binary entirely, because his heroism and his betrayal are not separate chapters. They are the same leg, wounded in the same battle, in service of a cause he would later sell out. The monument forces a harder kind of memory, one that holds contradiction without resolving it. It asks whether courage can be honored independently of character, whether an act can remain true even after the person who performed it proves untrustworthy. Art historians who study commemorative sculpture often point to the Boot Monument as one of the earliest American examples of a memorial built around deliberate omission, using absence itself as the primary symbolic device. So the next time you hear the name Benedict Arnold used as an insult, remember that somewhere in upstate New York, there is a monument that argues he deserves more nuance than that. Built by a man too proud or too honest to write the name upon it. It leaves us with the same question it left its first visitors in 1887. Can a single act of courage stand on its own, separate from everything a man does afterward? Or does betrayal reach backward through time and poison even the bravest thing he ever did? The boot has no answer. It simply stands there, wounded and anonymous, waiting for each of us to decide.